One. In this video, I am going to tell you about women's rights in review 30 years after Beijing. The United Nations organization has very recently published a report after the conclusion of the Beijing 30. You all know that the people of women's empowerment and gender equality are well aware that in regard to women's empowerment and to bring about equality in society and to reduce gender gap, there was a declaration that is called famous Beijing Declaration, which was held in Beijing in 1995. So you see now it is 2025, so already 30 years have gone. So within this last 30 years, how much we have achieved, the world has achieved as a whole to bring down gender gap and to progress women's empowerment, women's literacy, and women's what is say equal status in society, and how much gender violence has been reduced in society, how much women's participation has been ensured in parliaments and in politics, in economic activities, and in other spheres of society. All those things has been have been reviewed in this report, and so it is published by United Nations Women, and the name of the report is Women's Rights in Review 30 Years After Beijing. Right, so it is a very great review and a great report. We can say this publication summarizes review of and appraisal of the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and platform for action and outcomes of the 23rd special session of the General Assembly, which was passed by the United Nations in 2025 as a report of the Secretary General. Right. So this is a great report, because this type of report last year we found another report that was the how a review of, in 2023, a report has been published by United Nations Women, UN Women, that told about the progress has been made up to 2023. And but this is the latest report which says about women's rights in review 30 years after Beijing. And very nice. There was one. Actually, this report has been divided into forward, introduction, and then you can say six, not chapters but six parts, right? And there is a note and end, and the forward has been very nice. Forward has been written by Sima Bahous. She is the executive director of the United Nations and the Secretary General of the United Nations. Right, a very nice forward. I can read a little bit. So she wrote that while we have not yet known a world of fully equality for women and girls, the global community collectively imagined it in the 1995 Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. These pivotal agreements, endorsed by 189 governments, outlined the steps needed to achieve gender equality and remains a lasting testament to multinational solidarity, multilateral solidarity, and commitment. Right. So this is really a fantastic uh, forward, and thereafter I can say that a very nice introduction has been written, and then, it is actually in 1989 189 governments have ratified this Beijing Declaration, and it is now unanimously adopted this Beijing Declaration and platform for action. Okay, and it became the most comprehensive and visionary agenda ever for gender equality and human rights for all women and girls, holding the key to more peaceful, prosperous, and inclusive societies for everyone. The Beijing Platform for Action was adopted at a time of hope and solidarity, when democratic and human rights institutions were strengthening and social movements were resurgent and on the march for rights and justice. Its 30th anniversary, however, takes place in a year in which the world faces severe challenges, fragile economies, and climate emergency, and unprecedented levels of armed conflicts and humanitarian crisis. You all know that still Israeli Gaza and Palestine conflict is going on, though there was a truce for a brief period, but once again the attacks are going on. So this is turmoil situation is going on in Arab and Israel, and they say Israel and Gaza and Palestine. And you see, if you see that, you will find that still, yeah, Ukraine is being attacked by Russia, and many hospitals, many schools, many buildings have been destroyed by Russian forces. It is really a pathetic scene, because my friends are there in Ukraine, and some of them are still there, and many of them have left the country and have taken shelter in neighboring countries. So this is really very great problem for youth, for children, for old, and for healing people, for ill people. So this is a great challenge for the society to develop, because if there is turmoil, if there is basically the world political situation is volatile. So in this volatile political situation, if we do not work, if we do not work with solidarity, if we do not work peacefully, if we do not work with fellow feeling, and if we do not extend our helping hand towards one another, it is very difficult to survive in this global situation. All right, that is why I think that, and you see, the all the 17 sustainable development goals will never be possible to attain if women's empowerment and gender equality are not achieved. So women's empowerment is sine qua non for to achieve sustainable development goals, or those are called the global goals, which have been adopted by all the countries in 2015, right? So, and which are supposed to be achieved by 2030, right? So I would say that yes, there are still there are many stumbling blocks. And what are the stumbling blocks? So the gender equality and women's empowerment are really having very severe problems. Though some 88% have passed laws and established services to eliminate violence against women and girls, most have banned discrimination in employment, and 44% are improving the quality of education, training, and lifelong learning for women and girls. More countries have ever are considering the impact of environmental degradation on women and girls, and reflecting gender equality in plans for climate action. Yet, gender discrimination remains deeply embedded in the structures of economy and societies. This sustains wide and unjust gap in power and resources, imposing a chronic constraint on progress on women's rights. The weakening of democratic rights has gone hand in hand with backlash on gender equality. So anti-rights actors are actively implementing, undermining long-standing consensus on key women's rights issues, right? So where they cannot roll back legal and policy gains altogether, they see to block or slow their implementation. Almost one quarter of countries reported that backlash on gender equality is hampering implementation of Beijing platform for action. But in this report, I would like to say how much we have progressed, or what have been achieved, and still what is the position of women in the world. Okay, so if we look, if we see the report, we'll find that by the numbers, uneven gains for gender equality has been achieved, right? So uneven gains. So the gains what have been achieved are still uneven, no even, no parallel, no equal gains have been achieved by women through the world, right? So you see, progress with acceleration needed where laws between 1995 and 2024, 1,531 legal reforms, 1,531 legal reforms have been taking place around the world to sought advancement of gender equality. It's not that in the 30 years nothing was done. Many activities or many progress, much progress has been achieved by the world, but still, what needs, but even still, only 64% of the legal rights of men, though there are 1,531 laws or legal reforms have been taken place in the world in the last 30 years. to advance gender equality and women's empowerment. But still, despite that progress, say 64% of the legal rights of men have been achieved. So still, how much? 64 means 36%. 36% are lagging behind, right? So we need to do more actively to achieve gender parity, right? So progress overall, but some women and girls are being left behind. Yeah, there are definitely some as people or women's empowerment activists and researchers are doing actively throughout the world. Despite that, poverty, what is the poverty situation of women? You see, 10% of women and girls live in extreme poor households. 10% of women and girls live in extreme poor households. The share climbs to 24% among women aged 18 to 34 who are the most likely to have young children. Okay, so what is the situation of education of women? See, girls surpass boys in upper secondary completion rates in most regions. I mean, girls surpass boys in upper secondary. Okay, in upper secondary sections or upper secondary level. But sub-Saharan Africa and Central and Southern Asia lag behind. How much? No, 59.5 million adolescent girls miss out on this fundamental right. How many? 59.5 million girls, adolescent girls, miss this fundamental right. Okay. Next, if you see that conflict, you see, I was saying that conflict is creating a stumbling block in women's empowerment, gender empowerment, or the progress as a whole, right? So you see, conflict since 2022, since the invasion of Russia on Ukraine, like I said, the serious of conflict-related cases of conflict-related sexual violence have risen 50%. It is not the people are coming and destroying the houses and buildings and hospitals and the and we say and other government buildings. No, it is not that. Along with invasion, sexual harassment and sexual intercourse have been increased, 50% increased on women, and who are doing? Definitely the male, I mean, male people are doing on women, girls. So the girls and women have become the victims of the war more than men. But still, but still, problem is problem and problem for all, both for men and women. But still, women and girls have become more victims due to war. Okay, right? So 50% women and girls suffer 95% of these crimes. Now, most of the crimes are happening against girls and women, right? So this is very pathetic. You have mother, I have mother. You have father, you have sister, I have sister. You have brother-in-law, sister-in-law, I have sister-in-law. So everybody, we all have taken birth from our mothers, and if our mothers and sisters are not given empowerment, if our mothers and sisters are not spared from violence, then how can the world will develop? So the political leaders and the perpetrators of crime must remember that they should not do that. They must refrain from violent activities against women and girls. Okay, so education rate I told, and poverty I told, and then sexual, how women and girls are being harassed and sexually assaulted, and then 50% women and girls suffer 90% of these crimes. Okay, then in workplace, what is the situation? You see, the report explains that gender gaps in work have stagnated for decades globally among people aged 25 to 54. 63% women are in the labor force compared to 92% of women. So labor force is also dominated by men, whereas 92% men are in the labor force, whereas 63% of women are in the labor force, right? So women still do 2.5x more unpaid care work than men, right? Men rarely do unpaid work. On the other hand, women do unpaid work at our home. Our mothers clean our clothes. Our mothers and our wife and male as I mean a man. So I'm talking about my wife. So my wife, my daughters mainly, my daughter's wife, mothers in different forms. I mean the women and girls, they do order most of the household chores. They do most of the cleaning works. They do most of the what I say laborious. Works that means manual works at home, right? So they prepare tea. They make they clean their dirty clothes. They wash their dishes. They wash maybe my mother, maybe your mother, maybe his mother, maybe her mother. So mothers are doing, right? Or sisters are doing, or women as a whole. You take women and girls are doing these things, right? So works gender gaps in a workplace say that if the women work means 63%, while 93%, 92% men are in the labor force, right? So this is the situation. And digital, if you say, what is the situation in digital sphere globally? The proportion of women using the internet increased from 50% to 65% between 2019 and 2024, but 277 million more men than women used the internet in 2024. Okay, so 277 million more men are using internet than women, right? Okay, so in 2025 it has been increased, yeah, definitely from 50% in 2019 to in 2025 it has been women's use of internet has been increased from 50% in 29 to 65% in 2024. Okay, and social protection, if you say, and I will say the global share of women receiving at least one social protection benefit rose by one third from 2010 to 2023. Even so, 2 billion women and girls had no social protection coverage at all in 2023. So 2 billion women and girls were out of the social protection benefits, right? So this is a grave situation. Women are not given equal social benefits also, right? Here is also discrimination. Child marriage, yes, though there are many schemes have been formulated by different countries and state governments. Despite that, child marriage is still a problem between 2023 and uh, 2003 and 2023, means within the last 20 years, the proportion of women married as children declined from 24% to 19%. Yet gains in averaging child marriage were three times highest in the richest households than in the poorest ones. Okay, so it is report says that three times higher in the richest households than in the poorest ones. Okay, so family planning. What is the situation in family planning from 1995 to 2024? Young women aged 15 to 24 witnessed the fastest increase in access to modern family planning based on band, but with only two-thirds of need satisfied, means they still lag behind all other age groups. Okay, so family planning also they need satisfied. But with only two two by third of needs satisfied, they still lag behind all other age groups. Okay, and maternal mortality. What is the situation? Maternal mortality rate are accounted for 1 lakh live births. Okay, so despite declining by one third globally from 2000 to 2015, the maternal mortality ratio has remained almost unchanged since then. In 2000, it was 339 per 1 million live births, but in 2025, it has reduced to 227. Okay, further in 2020, it has reduced to 223 per 1 lakh live births. Okay, 1 lakh, if you do not understand, 100,000 births per 100 lakh 100,000 live births. Okay, so financing, what is the situation in 2021 and 2023? 42% of bilateral allocable official development assistance made gender equality a policy objective. This was down from 45% in 2019 to 2020. Only 4% of aid went to programs with gender equality as the principal objective. See, only 4% budgetary allocation is going for programs related to women's empowerment and development. That is why I want to say that women's empowerment and development, we may tell, we may give lectures, we may talk very big talk, we may deliver big lectures, but actually we, the global leaders as a whole are spending only 4% aid for programs with gender equality as a principal objective, right? So more budgetary allocation should be done, more participation of women should be done, should be achieved in labor force participation. Women's internet use should be more. Women's political participation should be more because of, still there is lack of parity between women's participation. Women's participation in legislatures, in their state legislatures, in the national legislatures, right? So everywhere you will find that gender discrimination or gender disparity is prevailing. May it be Asian, may it be America, may it be Europe, everywhere in the world except a few Scandinavian countries, women are discriminated, women are harassed, women are tortured, women are slapped, women are punched, women, women's hair are pulled, women are abused, women are raped, women are mocked, are women are taunted. So this is a grave situation still in the 21st century where women are going to the moon, where women are going to the space, but still on this soil, these things, discrimination is going on fully in the, I mean, on the nose of the, near the, before the eyes of the political leaders or global leaders. So these things should be changed. These things globally, 772 million women work in the informal economy in insecure jobs that lack social protection. See, 772 million women work in informal economy and insecure positions or insecure jobs that lack social protection, and they do not have any social protection. Since 1995, the number of countries with laws prohibiting gender-based discrimination in employment has increased from 52 to 162. Okay, in 1995, gender-based violence or gender-based discrimination in employment were in 58 in 1995, but laws prohibiting gender-based discrimination have been increased to 162 in 2024. Okay, so large-scale investments in inclusive care services could generate close to 300 million jobs globally by 2035, with 78% of these new jobs holding for women. Poverty eradication and social protection are needed, and the social services also increased for women's empowerment. And it seems that the report says that women and girls in extreme fragile contexts are 7.7 times more likely to live in extreme poor households than those in non-fragile contexts. Okay, in 2024, 393 million women and girls were living in extreme poverty. 393 million were living in extreme poverty. Okay, a policy package that ensures equal wages, social protection, and essential services could reduce this figure by 115 million by 2050. Okay, so you see, freedom from violence, stigma, and stereotypes should be achieved. It seems that globally, violence against women and girls persists at alarming. across their lifetime around. I say always, I suggest that women's empowerment can be achieved by economic empowerment, means women's participation in economic activities, and at the same time I say that women's physical exercise or physical empowerment is also needed along with psychological empowerment. Because physical needed, why? You see, we all have heard the name of Laila Ali, the daughter of Muhammad Ali. She is also a boxer. She was also a boxer. So whenever you will try to punch her, she will in return give such a punch that will smash your jaws. So if you were physically empowered, so then they are, I mean, through you can use black people, you can use you can keep your nails big, you can keep spray, chili spray, you can keep and otherwise you can, and those are the things you should carry. And you should always, I mean, judo karate, I say on judo karate, whenever girls learn judo karate, then boys and people are afraid to touch her. She may go alone on the road, even at night, but people will be afraid to touch her, to taunt her, to do any bad things with her, right? So physical empowerment is very much necessary. And on the other hand, mental makeup. Yesterday I was watching an event. In that event, I saw that Chanakya is advising to his disciple, right, Chandra. He was saying that you do one thing, you, everything cannot be fought by, by physical power or only by fighting in wars, but many wars or many struggles or many conflicts can be won by by intelligence and by number one, intelligence, and say without fear or with boldness. So fearlessness and intelligence, those are the two things by which you can defeat your enemies also without using your arms and ammunition. Okay, so you see 736 million women are still subjected to physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner, right, or sexual violence by a non-partner. The new norms of violence demanded urgent attention across 12 countries in Europe and Central Asia. 53% of adult women online have experienced some form of technology facilitated gender based violence at least once. 53% of adult women, even in Europe. Just imagine. So people or women or girls should be empowered. Okay, laws and policies. So since 2019, 90% of states have reported introducing or strengthening violence against women and girls laws. Their implementation and enforcement, while 79% have set up, updated, or expanded national action plan to end violence. Despite action plan 79%. Okay, so all those things are being done, and with all those things, I think that women's empowerment will be achieved in near future. And I am an advocate of women's empowerment. I think that women's empowerment is necessary. Women's empowerment is necessary, and it's a sine qua non. It's the most important thing to achieve gender, to achieve global goals, that is sustainable development goals by 2030. And the government of India and many governments have taken different states or many supportive states for um, empowering women and bringing about parity between women and men, and trying governments are trying to reduce gender gap in wages and labor force participation. So but despite that, there are still many challenges which have been discussed earlier. I think that governments will be more proactive and will spend more money. Only I told that only 4% of their budgetary allocation is being 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 allocated, I mean, or being spent only for what purposes? Only for programs. That is, though those are related to direct women's empowerment, right? So more money should be spent, more budgetary allocation should be increased for women's empowerment. With all those things, I would say finally that women's mental makeup should be increased. Women's mental makeup must be heightened. Women's mental makeup should be strengthened. Okay, they should avoid fearlessness, fear. They should avoid hesitation. They should fear any shame, and they should work hard for their own empowerment. With all these things, I would like to conclude here. Thank you. Thank you very much.